For over 25 years, we've all been asking the wrong question. We've been asking, who is Joy Boy, a legendary pirate, a hero from the Void Century, the man who fought against the world government over 800 years ago? But what if that was never the real mystery? What if Oda wants us to ask, when is Joy Boy? I know that sounds absolutely insane, but after Egghead Elbaf and everything Oda has revealed recently, there's one theory that suddenly doesn't feel as impossible as it once did. What if Luffy doesn't inherit Joy Boy's legacy? What if he eventually becomes the Joy Boy that history remembers? Now hold on. I'm not saying this theory is confirmed, but once you connect the clues, it's surprisingly difficult to ignore, and it all starts with one giant robot. When Emeth first appeared on Egghead, everyone focused on his incredible haki and his connection to the ancient kingdom. But almost nobody asked the obvious question. How did Emeth recognize Luffy? Think about it. This robot has been asleep for centuries. The world government couldn't activate him. Vegapunk couldn't understand him. Nothing worked. Then Luffy transformed into Gear 5. The drums of liberation echoed across Egghead, and Emeth woke up instantly. At first, that makes sense. Gear 5 is connected to Nika. Joy Boy also possessed the power of Nika, so naturally, Emeth reacts. But here's the strange part. He doesn't react like someone seeing a stranger. He reacts like someone seeing an old friend. He immediately trusts Luffy. He risks everything for him, almost as if he already knows him. And that's impossible, because Joy Boy lived over 800 years ago, while Luffy is only 19 years old. Unless this wasn't their first meeting, maybe. It was only Luffy's first meeting with Emeth. Then Oda quietly drops another clue, one that almost everyone overlooked. Go back and look closely at Emeth's arm. There's a giant X. Now, if you've been reading One Piece since Alabasta, that symbol should immediately feel familiar. Back in Alabasta, the Straw Hats secretly marked themselves with an X to identify one another after Bon Clay's disguises. Years later, Vivi used that exact same symbol again as a hidden message to the crew after Egghead, twice. Oda connects the X directly to Luffy and the Straw Hats. So why would a robot from the Void Century carry that exact same symbol? Was it just a random design choice? Maybe. But this is Oda, the same man who foreshadowed Sanji's royal bloodline hundreds of chapters before Whole Cake Island. He doesn't usually repeat iconic symbols without a reason. And what if that X isn't a mark from the past, but a memory from the future? What if Luffy hasn't placed that mark on Emeth yet? Because if that ever happens, suddenly, Emeth recognizing Luffy makes perfect sense. But Emeth isn't the biggest clue. Not even close, because someone else knew Joy Boy personally, and his words might completely change how we've understood Wano from the very beginning. Zunesha. Now let's go back to Wano, because if Emeth made this theory possible, Zunesha made it believable. Think about the moment Luffy awakened Gear 5. For the first time in over 800 years, the drums of liberation echoed across Wano. Zunesha immediately smiled, and said something that fans still debate today. He didn't say, Luffy has inherited Joy Boy's will. He didn't even say, this reminds me of Joy Boy. Instead, he declared, Joy Boy has returned! Now that could simply mean Luffy inherited Joy Boy's will. That's a completely valid interpretation. But here's the interesting part. Zunesha actually knew Joy Boy. If anyone in the entire story could tell the difference, it would be him. So why did Oda choose those exact words? Then there's Roger. After reaching Laugh Tale, he discovered the truth of the world. He laughed, and then said something that's confused fans for years. We were too early. Too early for what? Roger had already reached the final island. He had already found the One Piece. So what was missing? Maybe it wasn't the treasure. Maybe it was the person destined to complete the story, and that person could be Luffy. Now, I know what you're thinking. Time travel doesn't belong in One Piece, except it already does. Kazuki Toki traveled from the Void Century into the future. That's not a theory. That's manga canon. Her power only moves people forward through time. But Oda has already shown us that time itself can be manipulated. And with the ancient kingdom's technology, Vegapunk's discoveries, and all the mysteries still hidden on Laugh Tale, it's not impossible that another method exists. Not confirmed, just possible. Now step back and look at everything together. Emeth recognizes Luffy. The mysterious X connects him to the Straw Hats. Zunesha says Joy Boy has returned. Roger says, "We were too early. Time travel already exists in the One Piece world." None of these clues prove that Luffy is Joy Boy, but together they raise one fascinating question. What if history already remembers something that Luffy hasn't experienced yet? Maybe Joy Boy and Luffy are two completely different people. Maybe they're connected only through inherited will, or maybe at some point in the Final Saga, Luffy travels to the Void Century, not to change history, but to complete it. Because remember, Emeth recognizing Luffy only becomes impossible. If you're looking at the story from Luffy's perspective, from Emeth's perspective, he may have already spent time with the future Pirate King, and that's what makes this theory so interesting. Not because it's confirmed, but because for the first time, all these mysterious clues seem to point in the same direction. Maybe we've spent 25 years searching for Joy Boy's identity when the real mystery was never who he was, but when. And if Oda really is building towards something this massive, then the greatest flashback in One Piece history might not be a flashback at all. It could be Luffy's next adventure. If you enjoyed this theory, don't forget to leave your own thoughts in the comments. Do you think Luffy could actually become the Joy Boy of the Void Century? Or is this simply Oda connecting the past and present through inherited will? I'd love to hear your take. And if you enjoyed the video, smash that like button, subscribe to Talks with Otaku, and I'll see you in the next One Piece mystery. Until then, keep believing in Oda's ability to surprise us.